Victorian decorative arts refers to the style of decorative arts during the Victorian era. Victorian design is widely viewed as having indulged in a grand excess of ornament. The Victorian era is known for its interpretation and eclectic revival of historic styles mixed with the introduction of Middle East and Asian influences in furniture, fittings, and interior decoration. The arts and crafts movement, the aesthetic movement, Anglo-Japanese style, and Art Nouveau style have their beginnings in the late Victorian era and Gothic period. Architecture, interior decoration and design. Interior decoration and interior design of the Victorian era are noted for orderliness and ornamentation. A house from this period was idealistically divided in rooms, with public and private space carefully separated. The parlor was the most important room in a home and was the showcase for the homeowners where guests were entertained. A bare room was considered to be in poor taste, so every surface was filled with objects that reflected the owner's interests and aspirations. The dining room was the second most important room in the house. The sideboard was most often the focal point of the dining room and very ornately decorated. Walls and ceilings. The choice of paint color on the walls in Victorian homes was said to be based on the use of the room. Hallways that were in the entry hall and the stair halls were painted a somber grey so as not to compete with the surrounding rooms. Most people marbleized the walls or the woodwork. Also on walls it was common to score into wet plaster to make it resemble blocks of stone. Finishes that were either marbleized or grained were frequently found on doors in woodwork. Graining was meant to imitate woods of higher quality that were more difficult to work. There were specific rules for interior color choice and placement. The theory of harmony by analogy was to use the colors that lay next to each other on the color wheel, and the second was the harmony by contrast, that was to use the colors that were opposite of one another on the color wheel. There was a favored tripartite wall that included a dado or wainscoting at the bottom, a field in the middle and a freezer cornice at the top. This was popular into the 20th century. Frederick Walton, who created linoleum in 1863, created the process for embossing semi-liquid linseed oil, backed with waterproofed paper or canvas. It was called lincruster and was applied much like wallpaper. This process made it easy to then go over the oil and make it resemble wood, leather or different types of leather. On the ceilings that were 8 to 14 feet the color was tinted 3 shades lighter than the color that was on the walls and usually had a high quality of ornamentation because decorated ceilings were favored. Furniture. There was not one dominant style of furniture in the Victorian period. Designers rather used and modified many styles taken from various time periods in history like Gothic, Tudor, Elizabethan, English Rococo, Neoclassical and others. The Gothic and Rococo revival style were the most common styles to be seen in furniture during this time in history. Wallpaper. Wallpaper and wall coverings became accessible for increasing numbers of householders with their wide range of designs and varying costs. This was due to the introduction of mass production techniques and, in England, the repeal in 1836 of the wallpaper tax introduced in 1712. Wallpaper was often made in elaborate floral patterns with primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, in the backgrounds and overprinted with colors of cream and tan. This was followed by Gothic art-inspired papers in earth tones with stylized leaf and floral patterns. William Morris was one of the most influential designers of wallpaper and fabrics during the latter half of the Victorian period. Morris was inspired and used medieval and Gothic tapestries in his work. Embossed paper were used on ceilings and friezes. Old interiors preserved. See also Victoriana, Eastlake movement, Neo-Victorian, Staffordshire dog figurine, French-Polish, Terradomania. Victorian fashion. Charles Eastlake. Victorian designer. Augustus Pugin. Victorian designer. References. External links. Victorian Room Virtual Tour. Victorian Design. Victorian Web. Org. Including ceramics, furniture, glass, jewelry, metalwork, and textiles. Early Victorian furniture history in England. Interior decoration and design. Floral wallpaper. Late Victorian era furniture history in England. Victorian bookmarks. Mostly Victorian. Arts, crafts and interior design articles from Victorian periodicals. Victorian furniture styles. Furniture. Victoria and Albert Museum. Retrieved 3 April 2011. The history of wall coverings and wallpaper. Interior design. Victorian, National Trust.